Dr. Carol Bennett stared at her holographic display, her eyes widening as she reviewed the data for the fifth time. The numbers couldn't be wrong. She had checked them repeatedly over the past 3 days. Something was happening to the basic laws of physics in certain regions of space, and it wasn't natural. The Lunar Research Station's observation dome offered a perfect view of Earth hanging in the black void. She took a moment to look up at her home planet, its blue-white surface partly hidden in shadow. Somewhere up there, humanity was fighting a desperate war against the Kether, and her discovery might explain why they were losing. Dr. Bennett, her assistant, Paul Rogers, knocked on the glass wall of her office. "Admiral Carter is here to see you." Carol quickly straightened her lab coat and gathered her data tablets. The Admiral rarely made personal visits to the research station. This had to be important. Admiral John Carter walked in, his uniform crisp despite the low gravity. His face showed the wear of someone who hadn't slept properly in days. "Dr. Bennett, I understand you have something urgent to discuss." "Yes, Admiral. Please, have a seat." She gestured to one of the chairs facing her desk. "What I'm about to show you might explain our recent military setbacks." She pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the solar system, with several areas marked in red. "These regions are where we've lost major battles against the Kether in the past month. My team has been analyzing data from these locations, and we found something disturbing." The Admiral leaned forward, his tired eyes focusing on the display. "Go on." "The fundamental constants of physics, things like the speed of light, gravitational constant, and electromagnetic forces, they're different in these regions. At first, we thought our instruments were malfunctioning, but we've confirmed it with multiple sources." She brought up a series of graphs and equations. "These changes aren't random. They follow a pattern, and they're stable. It's as if someone rewrote the laws of physics in these specific areas of space." Carter's face darkened. "Are you saying the Kether can change how physics works?" "Not exactly. They're creating what we call dead zones, areas where our understanding of physics doesn't apply anymore. That's why our weapons and defensive systems fail in these regions. They're not designed to work under these altered conditions." The Admiral stood up and paced the small office, his boots making soft thumps on the metal floor. "This explains a lot. Last week, we lost 3 battleships in the Kuiper Belt. Their shields just stopped working, and their weapons couldn't hit anything." Carol nodded. "I've analyzed the data from those battles. The dead zones appeared just before the engagement began. The Kether must have some way to create these anomalies. Can we counter it?" "Maybe. But first, we need to understand exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it." She pulled up another display showing particle interactions in the affected zones. "I need more data, specifically from active battle sites." Carter rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "That's dangerous, but necessary. I'll assign you the research vessel Northern Star. She's small, fast, and well-equipped for scientific observation." "Thank you, Admiral. I'll need to bring my team. Dr. Alan White for quantum analysis and Lisa Brown for field measurements." "Granted, but be careful out there, Doctor. The Kether are getting bolder. They've started attacking civilian targets now." Carol felt a chill run down her spine. Her sister lived on one of the Mars colonies with her family. If the Kether started targeting settlements, the next few days were a blur of preparation. Carol and her team loaded their equipment onto the Northern Star, a sleek vessel designed for scientific research in combat zones. Its hull was painted in radar-absorbing black, making it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. "All systems check complete," Alan announced from his station. "Quantum sensors are calibrated and ready." Lisa looked up from her own console. "Field measurement arrays are online. We can detect any fluctuation in the fundamental constants." Harold took her place in the command chair. As the senior scientist, she had operational control of the mission. "Start recording all sensor data. Helm, take us out." The Northern Star glided smoothly out of the lunar dock, its engines barely a whisper. Their destination was the scene of the most recent battle, where the laws of physics had been twisted into something alien and hostile. As they approached the coordinates, Carol felt her heart racing. If they could understand how the Kether were creating these dead zones, humanity might have a chance to fight back. Energy readings are off the scale. Lisa called out, "The space-time fabric itself is distorted here." Carol watched as their instruments began to show impossible readings. Light seemed to bend in ways it shouldn't, and their artificial gravity flickered uncertainly. "Look at this," Alan said, pointing to his display. "The quantum field is completely restructured. It's like they've rewritten the most basic rules of the universe." Carol was about to respond when the ship's warning system blared to life. A Kether patrol had spotted them. "Evasive maneuvers," Carol ordered. "Get us out of here." The Northern Star turned sharply, its engines straining as they pushed against the altered physics of the dead zone. The Kether ship, a dark shape against the stars, fired a shot that seemed to bend as it traveled through the distorted space. Hull integrity at 85%. Lisa shouted. That hit shouldn't have been possible at this range. Carol gripped her chair as the ship shuddered. Full power to engines. Get us back to normal space. The chase seemed to last forever, but finally, they broke free of the dead zone. The Kether ship didn't follow, apparently content to let them escape. Back at the Lunar Research Station, Carol reviewed the data they had collected. It was better than she had hoped. Detailed readings of how the physics anomalies formed and behaved. "Admiral," she called Carter on the secure channel. "We need to convene the Human Council. What we found. It changes everything we thought we knew about this war." Carter's face was grim on the screen. "I'll make the arrangements. The Council needs to know that we're not just fighting an alien species, we're fighting an enemy that can change the rules of reality itself." As Carol prepared her presentation for the Council, she couldn't help but wonder, if the Kether could change physics itself, what hope did humanity have? But then she remembered something her old physics professor used to say. The more complex a system is, the more ways it can fail. Maybe that was the key, finding the flaw in the Kether's seemingly perfect weapon. The fate of humanity would depend on what they did with this knowledge. And Carol Bennett, who had spent her life studying the unchangeable laws of physics, now faced the challenge of finding a way to fight in a universe where those laws no longer applied. The emergency meeting room on the Lunar Research Station buzzed with tension as Dr. Carol Bennett presented her findings to the newly assembled investigation team. "These are the regions where physics itself has been altered," she explained, pointing to the red zones on the holographic map. "We need to understand how the Kether are doing this, and more importantly, how to counter it." Dr. Peter Wright, the quantum specialist brought in from Saturn's Rings research facility, studied the data with intense focus. His reputation for solving impossible problems had earned him this spot on the team. Next to him, military strategist Laura Martinez made notes on her tablet, her years of combat experience helping her see patterns others might miss. "The energy signatures are unlike anything I've ever seen," Peter said, zooming in on one of the affected areas. "It's as if they're creating localized bubbles where quantum mechanics operates under different rules." Laura pointed to several battle locations. "Notice how these dead zones appear just before major engagements. They're not random. They're part of a deliberate strategy." The team spent the next several days analyzing data from various battles. They set up a temporary command center in the station's west wing, walls covered with displays showing battle footage, sensor readings, and complex equations. "Look at this," Laura called out one morning, bringing up footage from a recent skirmish. "The Kether ships always move in specific patterns before a dead zone appears." Carol and Peter hurried over to her station. The video showed 3 Kether vessels forming a triangle formation before the physics anomaly began to form. "They need multiple ships to generate these effects," Peter realized. "It's not a single source. They're creating some kind of field between their vessels." Carol checked the energy readings. The power output is enormous. They must be using their entire ship's energy reserve to maintain these zones. As they dug deeper, more patterns emerged. The dead zones weren't completely random. They followed specific rules, even if those rules were different from normal physics. "It's like they're playing a game of chess," Laura said during one late-night session. "They're not just changing physics, they're changing it in ways that specifically counter our technology." Peter nodded, rubbing his tired eyes. "Our weapons rely on precise physical constants. Change those constants, and nothing works as designed." The breakthrough came on the fourth day. Carol was reviewing data from the Northern Star's close encounter when she noticed something odd. "Everyone, come look at this," she called out. The team gathered around her display. "See these energy fluctuations? They're not continuous. There are microseconds when the field weakens." Peter leaned in closer. "She's right. The dead zones aren't stable. They require constant power to maintain." "And look at this," Laura added, pulling up tactical data. "The Kether never maintain a dead zone for more than 20 minutes at a time. They must have limitations on how long they can sustain them." The team worked through the night, piecing together their discovery. The Kether technology, while incredibly advanced, wasn't perfect. It had weaknesses they could exploit. "The physics changes affect our energy weapons and shields," Carol explained at their morning briefing with Admiral Carter. "But what about purely mechanical weapons? Things that don't rely on complex physics?" Laura's eyes lit up. "Like old-style projectile weapons. Kinetic energy doesn't change, even when other physics laws do." "Exactly," Peter agreed. "The Kether might be vulnerable to simpler forms of warfare, things they wouldn't expect us to use." Admiral Carter considered this. "So you're saying we should look to the past to fight a future war?" "In a way, yes," Carol replied. "But we need to test this theory. We need to build prototype weapons and see if they work in the dead zones." The Admiral authorized the construction of a testing facility in one of the station's unused cargo bays. Engineers worked around the clock to build simple mechanical weapons based on ancient principles. The first test was scheduled for a week later. The team had created a small-scale version of a dead zone using data from their observations. It wasn't as powerful as what the Kether could produce, but it would serve for testing. "Ready for test one," Peter announced from behind the safety barrier. They had built a simple spring-powered projectile launcher, about as basic as you could get. Carol initiated the dead zone. A familiar distortion appeared in the air, bending light and making instruments go haywire. "Dead zone is stable. Proceed with the test." Laura pressed the firing control. The launcher snapped forward, sending its projectile straight through the dead zone. It hit the target on the other side with perfect accuracy. "It worked," Carol exclaimed. The dead zone had no effect on the mechanical system. The team spent the next few days running more tests, confirming their theory. While energy weapons and advanced technology failed in the dead zones, simple mechanical devices worked perfectly. "We need to scale this up," Laura said during their final briefing. "Build larger versions that can be mounted on ships. The Kether won't expect us to use such basic weapons." Admiral Carter agreed. "I'll present your findings to the Human Council. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." As the team prepared their presentation for the Council, Carol couldn't help but feel a mix of hope and irony. The key to fighting an enemy with superior technology might be to use technology from humanity's past. "It's like the saying goes," Peter commented as they reviewed their final report. "Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one." Laura smiled grimly. "The Kether think they've outsmarted us by changing the rules of physics, but they forgot that humans have been fighting and winning wars long before we understood quantum mechanics." The team's discovery would soon change the course of the war, but for now, they had to convince the Human Council that the path forward lay in looking backward. Their evidence was solid, their theory tested, and now it was time to put their findings into action. As Carol made the final adjustments to their presentation, she thought about how far they'd come in just 2 weeks. They had started with a mystery, why physics itself seemed to fail in battle, and found not just an explanation, but a solution. The council meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. Admiral Carter informed them. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we start planning how to take back our solar system. The team nodded, knowing that their discovery was just the beginning. The real work, turning this knowledge into victory, was still ahead of them. Mars Base Alpha hummed with activity as representatives from every human colony gathered for the emergency council meeting. The massive dome of the council chamber, built to withstand the harsh Martian environment, reflected the red light of the planet's surface. Dr. Carol Bennett stood at the podium, facing the assembled council members. The curved rows of seats held the most powerful people in human space: colony leaders, military commanders, and scientific directors. Admiral Carter sat in the front row, giving her an encouraging nod. Distinguished council members, Carol began, her voice steady despite her nerves. What I'm about to present will change our understanding of the war against the Kether. The holographic display behind her showed the map of dead zones across the solar system. The enemy has found a way to alter the fundamental laws of physics in specific regions of space. This is not theory. We have proof. Murmurs filled the chamber. Council member Susan Hayes, representing the Europa colonies, leaned forward. Are you saying they can change reality itself? In a way, yes. Carol brought up the data from their research. They create areas where our normal physics doesn't apply. This is why our weapons fail, why our shields collapse, why we've been losing battles. The chamber erupted in concerned discussion. Council member Richard Foster from Mars Colony stood up. How is this possible? The laws of physics are supposed to be unchangeable. Peter Wright stepped forward to help explain. The Kether aren't actually changing the underlying structure of the universe. They're creating localized fields where different rules apply. Think of it like changing the rules in a small area of a game board. Laura Martinez added her military perspective. These dead zones appear before major battles. The Kether used them to neutralize our advanced technology, leaving us defenseless. The council members exchanged worried looks. Humanity had built its defense forces around energy weapons, shield systems, and advanced targeting computers. If these systems couldn't function... Susan Hayes rose from her seat. I think I see where this is going. If our advanced technology doesn't work in these zones, what about simple mechanics? Basic physics? Exactly, Carol confirmed. We've tested this theory. While energy weapons fail, mechanical systems still function perfectly. The Kether didn't account for simpler forms of warfare. She played the video of their weapons tests, showing how basic projectile weapons could penetrate the dead zones without any loss of effectiveness. The council watched in silence as test after test confirmed their findings. We propose Operation Retrograde, Laura explained, a complete redesign of our military strategy, focusing on weapons that don't rely on advanced physics, simple, effective, and immune to the Kether's interference. Admiral Carter stood up. We've already begun prototype development. Early tests are promising. One of the military commanders raised his hand. How do we know the Kether won't find a way to counter this too? They might, Carol admitted. But right now, they're completely focused on neutralizing our advanced technology. They don't expect us to use simpler weapons. We have the element of surprise. The council chamber filled with heated debate. Some members argued for immediate action, while others wanted more testing. The discussion continued for hours as they weighed the risks and benefits. Finally, Susan Hayes called for order. We need to vote on this. The Kether are pushing deeper into our territory every day. We need to act. The voting process was quick. The evidence was clear, and the need was urgent. The council approved Operation Retrograde with an overwhelming majority. Dr. Bennett, the council president, addressed her. You and your team have done remarkable work. What resources do you need to move forward? Carol looked at her colleagues before responding. We need engineering teams to begin mass production of the new weapons, training facilities to teach our forces how to use them. And most importantly, we need time. Time is something we don't have much of, Laura reminded them. The Kether are planning something big. Their dead zones are appearing more frequently in strategic locations. The council president nodded gravely. You'll have whatever you need. Humanity has faced extinction before. We won't go quietly now. As the meeting concluded, council members broke into groups to discuss implementation details. Engineers were already drawing up plans for new weapon systems, while military strategists began revising their battle tactics. Carol found herself looking out one of the base's windows at the Martian landscape. The red planet had been humanity's first step into space, and now it might be where they found the key to survival. Quite a view, isn't it? Susan Hayes joined her at the window. My grandfather helped build this base. He used to say that Mars taught humanity how to adapt and survive in hostile environments. Looks like we need that lesson again. We'll adapt, Carol assured her. It's what humans do best. The Kether think they've found our weakness, Susan mused. Instead, they've reminded us of our strength. We don't need fancy technology to fight. We just need determination and ingenuity. Admiral Carter approached them. The Council has approved immediate funding and resources. We start working on the new weapons tomorrow. Carol nodded, her mind already racing with plans. They had the Council's support, they had a strategy, and most importantly, they had hope. The Kether thought they had found the perfect way to defeat humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. As the Council members dispersed to their various duties, Carol gathered her team. There was much work to be done, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. But for the first time since the war began, they had a real chance of victory. The stars shone brightly through the dome of Mars Base Alpha, reminding them of all they fought to protect. Tomorrow, they would begin turning the tide of war, not with advanced technology, but with the simple, proven principles that had served humanity for millennia. Engineer Kevin Douglas stood in the massive testing facility on Ceres, watching as his team assembled the latest prototype. The huge chamber, carved deep into the dwarf planet's rock, echoed with the sounds of construction. "Load the test projectile," he ordered, checking the readings on his tablet. The railgun they had built was unlike anything humanity had used in centuries. Simple, mechanical, and deadly effective. His assistant, Amy Clark, supervised the loading procedure. Projectile secured. Power systems are minimal, just enough for basic targeting. The weapon they had created looked out of place among the sleek, modern equipment of the testing facility. It was deliberately crude, a massive spring-loaded launcher enhanced with simple mechanical systems. "Ready for test firing," Amy announced. "Dead zone simulation is active." Kevin watched as the familiar distortion appeared in the firing range. They had recreated the Kether's physics-altering field using data from Dr. Bennett's team. "Fire when ready." The launcher's release mechanism clicked, and the projectile shot forward with devastating force. It passed through the dead zone without any loss of velocity, hitting the target with pinpoint accuracy. "Direct hit," Amy called out. No deflection, no energy loss, just pure kinetic force. Kevin allowed himself a small smile. After weeks of work, they were finally seeing real progress. The weapon designs they had created were based on ancient principles of warfare, updated with just enough modern technology to make them effective in space. "Send the results to command," he instructed. "And prep the next test. We need to try different projectile types." Over the next few days, they tested various weapons designs, simple projectile launchers, mechanical targeting systems, and basic armor plates that could withstand the strange physics of the dead zones. Admiral Carter visited the facility to observe their progress. "How soon can we begin mass production?" he asked, watching another successful test firing. "The designs are ready," Kevin replied. "We've kept them as simple as possible. Any shipyard in the system can build them with basic materials." "Good. We're detecting increased Kether activity near Jupiter. They're planning something big." The engineering team worked around the clock, modifying existing ships to carry the new weapons. They stripped out advanced energy weapons and replaced them with the mechanical systems they had developed. "It feels strange," Amy commented as they installed a launcher on a destroyer. "Like we're going backwards in time." "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Kevin replied, adjusting the targeting mechanism. "The Kether won't expect this. They think they've neutralized our technology, but they've just forced us to be creative." The first full-scale test came a week later. They had converted an old cargo ship into a weapons platform, equipped with multiple launchers and simple armor plating. "Test vessel Stone Thrower is ready for trials," Kevin reported to the command center. "All systems are mechanical, minimal electronic signatures." They created a large-scale dead zone in the test area, similar to what they'd face in actual combat. The Stone Thrower moved into position, its engines running on basic chemical propulsion. "Target drones are in position," Amy announced. "They're simulating Kether attack patterns." Kevin watched as the Stone Thrower engaged the targets. Its weapons were crude by modern standards, but devastatingly effective. The projectiles passed through the dead zone without any loss of power, destroying target after target. "All targets eliminated," Amy reported. Weapon systems maintained full efficiency throughout the engagement. The success of the test led to rapid expansion of the program. Shipyards across the solar system began converting vessels to the new specifications. Training programs were established to teach crews how to use the simplified weapons. "It's like learning to fight with one hand tied behind our back," one of the training instructors commented. "But sometimes limitations make us stronger." Kevin spent long hours refining the designs, making them more efficient while keeping them simple enough to work in the dead zones. Each improvement was tested thoroughly before being approved for production. "The Kether think they found our weakness," he told his team during a briefing. "But they've forgotten that humans fought wars long before we had energy weapons and force fields." As more ships were converted, they began conducting fleet exercises. The sight of modern space vessels using what amounted to advanced versions of ancient weapons was strange, but the results were undeniable. Admiral Carter visited again to observe one of the exercises. "How are the crews adapting to the new systems?" "Better than expected," Kevin replied. "The simplicity makes training easier. No complex power management or targeting computers to worry about." The exercise demonstrated the effectiveness of their strategy. The converted ships moved through the dead zones with ease, their weapons unaffected by the changed physics. "Operation Retrograde is ready for implementation," Kevin reported to the command staff. "The first wave of converted ships can deploy within days." As they prepared for actual combat, Kevin couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what they had accomplished. They had taken humanity's defeat and turned it into an opportunity for innovation. "The Kether think they've beaten us by changing the rules," he told Amy as they watched another successful test. "But they've just reminded us that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." The counter-strategy was ready. Now it was time to see how the Kether would react when their supposedly perfect weapon proved useless against humanity's return to basics. As Kevin made final adjustments to the weapon systems, he thought about how far they had come. From the brink of defeat, they had found a way forward by looking backward. The next phase of the war would show the Kether that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology, but its ability to adapt and overcome. The stars shone through the observation dome, reminding them of all they fought to protect. Tomorrow, they would begin taking back their solar system, one mechanical projectile at a time. Commander Mary Thompson stood on the bridge of her converted battleship, watching as her fleet assembled near Saturn's rings. The ships looked different now, their sleek energy weapons replaced with mechanical launchers and simple armor plating. "All vessels report ready," her tactical officer, Frank Miller, announced. "Operation Retrograde is go." Mary nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Intelligence had reported a large Kether fleet moving through the outer system, no doubt planning another attack using their physics-altering technology. "Send the signal," she ordered. "All ships to battle stations. Remember your training. Keep it simple. Keep it mechanical." The human fleet moved silently through space, their engines running on basic chemical propulsion to avoid detection. The Kether had grown overconfident, believing their dead zones made them invincible. Enemy fleet detected, Frank reported. They're forming up in their usual attack pattern. Mary watched as the Kether ships arranged themselves in their characteristic triangular formations. Soon, they would activate their dead zones, expecting the human fleet to become helpless. "Hold position," she commanded. "Let them make the first move." The space between the fleets began to distort as the Kether activated their physics-altering fields. The familiar shimmer of dead zones spread across the battlefield. "Dead zones detected," Frank confirmed. "But our systems are unaffected. All weapons report ready." Mary allowed herself a small smile. "Send the order. Operation Retrograde is now active." The human fleet surged forward, catching the Kether completely by surprise. The alien ships had expected their dead zones to neutralize human technology, as they had so many times before. Instead, they faced a barrage of simple projectiles, launched from mechanical systems that ignored the altered physics. The first volley caught 3 Kether ships directly, their shields useless against the pure kinetic force. "Direct hits," Frank called out. "Enemy ships showing heavy damage. They're trying to regroup." The Kether fleet scrambled to respond, but their tactics relied heavily on the advantage their dead zones provided. Without that edge, they were vulnerable to the primitive but effective human weapons. "Second wave, fire at will," Mary ordered. "Keep the pressure on. Don't let them adapt." More projectiles streaked across space, their trajectories unaffected by the physics anomalies. The Kether ships tried to evade, but their movements were predictable. They were still trying to maintain the formations needed for their dead zones. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation," Frank reported. "Their dead zones are collapsing." Mary leaned forward in her command chair. "This is what we've trained for. All ships, advance and engage. Show them what humanity can do with the basics." The battle transformed into a chaotic melee as the human fleet pressed their advantage. Without their physics-altering technology, the Kether found themselves outmatched by weapons they had dismissed as primitive. "Enemy flagship is attempting to retreat," Frank announced. "Should we pursue?" "Negative," Mary replied. "Let them run. Let them tell their leaders what happened here." The remaining Kether vessels fled, leaving behind the wreckage of their defeated ships. The human fleet had suffered minimal damage. Their simple armor and mechanical systems had proven remarkably resilient. "Send word to command," Mary ordered. Operation Retrograde was successful. The Kether dead zones can be countered. As the fleet secured the battlefield, reports began coming in from other sectors. Similar battles were taking place throughout the solar system, with human forces using their new weapons to devastating effect. "The Kether are falling back everywhere," Frank reported, reading the incoming messages. "They're abandoning their forward positions." Mary walked to the observation window, watching as cleanup crews began salvaging what they could from the battle. The victory had cost them little in terms of resources, another advantage of their simplified approach. "Send a message to all ships," she commanded. "Well done, everyone. Today we proved that humanity's strength isn't in our technology. It's in our ability to adapt and overcome." The fleet began to regroup, preparing to secure their newly won territory. Engineers were already studying the abandoned Kether vessels, looking for weaknesses they could exploit in future battles. Back on Earth, the Human Council received the news of the victory with cautious optimism. The war wasn't over, but they had found a way to fight back effectively. Dr. Carol Bennett, watching the battle data with her team, felt a surge of pride. Their discovery had led to this moment, humanity turning apparent defeat into victory. "The Kether will try to adapt," Peter Wright commented, studying the readings. "They'll look for ways to counter our new weapons." "Let them try," Laura Martins replied. "We've proven we can adapt faster than they can. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." As the day ended, Mary Thompson made one final entry in her command log. "Today marks a turning point in our war with the Kether. They sought to defeat us by changing the rules of physics, but in doing so, They forced us to remember that humanity's greatest weapon has always been our resourcefulness. The stars are ours again. The human fleet maintained their positions, ready for any counterattack. But for now, they had achieved something remarkable. They had beaten an technologically superior enemy by embracing their past. In the depths of space, the wreckage of Kether ships drifted silently, a testament to the fact that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. Humanity had taken back their solar system, not with advanced technology, but with the basic principles that had served them since the dawn of warfare. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The Kether would think twice before assuming their physics-altering technology made them invincible. Humanity had proven once again that their greatest strength lay not in their tools, but in their ability to adapt and overcome any challenge.